14 ways to make money with Interactive Brokers that I bet you probably don't know more than half of them. And the truth is, the vast majority of people who open an account with this broker do it for just one thing, to buy and sell stocks. But it turns out that Interactive Brokers is probably the most complete investment platform in the world, and it has ways to make money that people don't even know exist. Some of them are so passive that you literally make money while you sleep. Others are for people with more experience who want to take their investments to the next level. And there's one in particular that I can assure you almost nobody knows about, and I find it fascinating. So stick around, because we're going to go from the least profitable, or the one that could potentially earn us the least, to the most profitable of all, or the one that historically can yield the highest returns. I've left the link to Interactive Brokers in the description in case any of these options catch your eye and you want to look into them a bit more, or if you don't have an account yet so you can go and sign up. All right, let's continue. Let's start with something that, personally, I find amazing, because it's making money without lifting a finger, literally. And that's because Interactive Brokers pays you interest on the money you have sitting idle in your account. In other words, imagine you deposit money into your Interactive Brokers account, but you haven't decided what to invest in yet. You're analyzing, you're waiting for the right moment. Well, whatever the case, that money just sitting there doing nothing is earning you a return of up to 3.14% per year in dollars. Now be careful, this doesn't apply to just any amount. The first $10,000 you have in cash don't earn any interest. It's from that point on that it starts to work. And another important detail is that the higher the total value of your account, the better rate you get. If your account has a net value of $100,000 or more, you get the full rate. If you have less, you get a proportion of that rate we talked about earlier. But what I'm getting at is that with the vast majority of brokers, leaving your money sitting there doesn't earn you anything at all. But here, it does. So if you have, let's say, $50,000 in your account and $30,000 of that is in cash, then those $20,000 that are above the $10,000 threshold are already earning a return. You're not going to get rich off this, obviously, but it's money coming in without you having to do anything, and that's always welcome. Now, the second way to make money without doing anything is something very few people know about, and it's called the Stock Yield Enhancement Program, or SYEP. Let me explain this to you in simple terms. When you buy stocks on Interactive Brokers, those stocks are there in your account. They're yours, plain and simple. But it turns out there are other traders who need to borrow those shares to do something called short selling. Basically, they want to bet that a stock is going to go down in price. So what Interactive Brokers does with this program is that you lend your shares to them, they lend them to those traders, and those traders pay interest to use your shares. From that interest, you receive 50%. And here's the interesting part. You remain the owner of your shares at all times. If the stock goes up, you win. If the stock goes down, well, you also lose, just like it normally would. But in addition, you're getting extra income just for having them there. The percentage they pay you depends on how much demand there is to borrow that stock. There are stocks that hardly anyone wants to borrow, and in those cases, the return is low, but there are others that are in high demand, and there you can get a pretty interesting return. The best part is that you can sell your stocks at any time without any restrictions, and you can leave the program whenever you want. To activate it, you just go to your account settings and enable it. It's that simple. Now let's move on to the next ways. So far, that's 2. Remember, there are 14. The next ways to make money with Interactive Brokers, I believe, are the foundation of any investment portfolio and are essential for people who are just starting out or who simply want something safer and more stable. And the first of these are U.S. Treasury bonds and CDs. CDs are certificates of deposit, which are basically the U.S. equivalent of what many countries know as fixed-term investments. In other words, you lend your money to the government, in this case the United States, or to a specific entity for a set period of time, and in return, they pay you a fixed yield. And here's something really important that a lot of people say. U.S. Treasury bonds are practically the safest investment in the world. Obviously, this could be debated, but it's what the vast majority of the financial world believes. Right now, yields are between 3.5% and 5% per year, depending on the term and the type of bond you choose. Now, within Interactive Brokers, you can access this directly. There's a section called the Bond Scanner, where you can filter by maturity date, bond type, yield, issuing country, and basically find exactly what you need according to your profile. You can find U.S. government bonds, corporate bonds, municipal bonds, and, well, a pretty wide variety. The idea here is that this type of investment gives you stability. You're not going to get huge returns, but you know with a good amount of certainty how much you'll receive and when. Now let's move on to the fourth way to make money with Interactive Brokers, and it's probably something many of you are familiar with: dividends. There are stocks and ETFs that, every so often, pay you a portion of the company's profits directly into your account. This is called a dividend. It's like you own a small piece of a company, and that company says, well, we did well this quarter, so here's your share. The dividend yield depends a lot on the stock or ETF you choose. There are companies that pay 2 or 3% per year in dividends, and there are others that pay 6, 7, or even 8%. And the great thing about all this is that you don't have to sell anything. Just by holding those shares in your account, you receive that money regularly. Within Interactive Brokers, you can see exactly when the dividend payment date is, how much they pay per share, and the year-by-year dividend history, so you can make a pretty informed decision. Let's move on to the fifth way to make money with Interactive Brokers, which is mutual funds. Interactive Brokers gives you access to more than 50,000 mutual funds from over 500 fund families worldwide. For example, we're talking about funds from Vanguard, BlackRock, Fidelity, PIMCO, and many more. And more than 20,000 of these funds are available with no transaction fee. The advantage of a mutual fund is that you invest in a single product, but inside, that product is highly diversified. There are conservative funds that can give you between 4 and 7% per year, and there are equity funds that have historically returned between 8 and 12%. This depends entirely on your risk profile and your goals. Let's move on to the next way to make money with Interactive Brokers, which I already mentioned earlier but haven't explained yet, and that's ETFs. An ETF is basically a basket of stocks that tracks an index or a specific sector. For example, the most famous ETF in the world tracks the S&P 500, which is made up of the 500 largest companies in the USA. Historically, this index has delivered an average return of around 10% per year over the long term, but there aren't just ETFs for the S&P 500. There are ETFs for emerging markets, technology, healthcare, renewable energy, real estate, high dividends, bonds, pretty much anything you can imagine. And with Interactive Brokers, you have access to a huge number of ETFs on different exchanges around the world. What I like about ETFs is that with a single purchase, you're already diversified. You're not putting all your eggs in one company, but rather in a group of them. And if you combine it with recurring investing, that is, investing a fixed amount every month regardless of whether the market is up or down, which is a strategy many investors use so they don't have to worry, well, in the long run, historically, that's worked out pretty well. The next investment actually comes from ETFs, and that's individual stocks. Here, we're getting into territory where the potential returns are higher, but so is the risk. When you buy a stock, you're buying a small piece of a specific company. If that company does well and grows, your stock increases in value and you make money. If it does poorly, then you lose. It's as simple as that. Here, returns can be 10%, 20%, 25% per year, or even much more if you pick the right companies, but they can also be negative if you don't know what you're doing. Interactive Brokers lets you buy stocks in more than 150 markets across over 30 different countries. We're talking about stocks in the United States, Europe, Asia, pretty much any stock exchange in the world. And this is something that many other brokers don't offer you with such breadth. And here's something I think is really great, especially for people who are just starting out. Interactive Brokers let you buy fractional shares. Let me explain what that means. Imagine you want to invest in Amazon, but Amazon stock is, let's say, $180, and right now you don't have $180 available to invest, or you just don't want to put all that money into a single stock. Well, with fractional shares, you can buy a piece of that stock. You can invest starting from just $1, and the returns are exactly the same in proportion. If the stock goes up 10%, your little piece also goes up 10%. So this democratizes investing because you don't need much capital to get started. But be careful. Here's something important. Interactive Brokers charges commissions, and if you invest very little, it's harder to profit. So keep a minimum investment in mind, especially with stocks. Let's move on to the next investment, and this is something that not many brokers can say they offer, which is pretty great for those who prefer something safer or more tangible, so to speak, and that's precious metals. And here, we're mainly talking about gold and silver. Gold has historically been considered a safe haven for value. When there's uncertainty in the world, when inflation is high, or during crisis, gold tends to maintain or even increase its value. Historically, it has provided an average return of between 7 and 10% per year over the long term, although this varies a lot depending on the period you look at. Silver is more volatile, but it also has its place within a diversified portfolio. With Interactive Brokers, you can invest in precious metals directly, and that's why I say it's for people who like real things, because with other brokers, we can also invest in gold or silver, but not directly. They even offer options for physical delivery of what you buy, but this will depend on the market you're investing from. For that, I recommend going to the Interactive Brokers website and looking into this in detail. Let's move on to the next investment, cryptocurrencies. Now, before you start telling me about crypto, the risks, and all that, in this case, we're not talking about tokens that came out of nowhere, or meme coins, or projects promising 1,000% returns. I'm talking about cryptocurrencies that already have a solid project behind them. Interactive Brokers allows you to trade certain cryptocurrencies directly from the platform for clients who are eligible. In other words, it's not for everyone. You'd have to check if you qualify. The advantage of doing it through Interactive Brokers is that you're in a regulated environment with the security offered by a broker of this size. The potential returns here are extremely high. Bitcoin has had years with triple-digit returns, but it's also had drops of 50%, 60%, even 80%. So it's something you need to approach with a clear head and only allocate a small percentage of your portfolio if you decide to go for it. But it's another option we have to make money within Interactive Brokers. Now we're getting into slightly more advanced territory. The next option within this advanced territory is options trading. An option, just to make it easy to understand, is a contract that gives you the right but not the obligation to buy or sell a stock at a specific price on a certain date. It sounds complicated, but let me give you a simple example. Imagine you think Apple stock, which is currently at $200, is going to go up to $230 in the next 3 months. Instead of buying the stock directly for $200, you can buy an options contract that costs you, let's say, $5 and gives you the right to buy Apple at $210 in 3 months. If Apple does go up to $230, you exercise your option, buy at $210, and make a profit. If Apple doesn't go up or goes down, the most you lose is those $5 you paid for the contract. Now, that's a very simplified investment. There are option strategies that are much more complex, but there are also some pretty conservative strategies. For example, there's one called covered calls, which is selling options on stocks you already have in your portfolio to generate some extra income between 1 and 3% per month. That is, your stocks are still there, you don't sell them, but you collect a premium for giving someone else the right to buy them from you at a set price. Done. If the stock doesn't reach that price, you keep your shares and the premium. It's a pretty smart way to get some extra return from what you already have. Now, let's move on to the next way to make money with Interactive Brokers in this advanced area, and that's what are called futures. A futures contract is an agreement to buy or sell an asset at a certain price on a future date. They're used a lot with stock indexes, commodities, currencies, and as we mentioned earlier, bonds. What makes futures attractive is the leverage. You can control a very large position with relatively little money, but that same leverage that can give you huge gains can also give you huge losses. A small market move can mean a very large gain or loss as a percentage of your capital. Interactive Brokers is one of the best brokers in the world for trading futures because of its low commissions and the number of markets you have access to. But I insist, this is for people who know what they're doing. So if you don't know anything about futures, I recommend that before you even consider investing there, study it very well and study it in depth and then see if this option is for you. And now we move on to the next option, which is Forex, the currency market. Here, what you do is trade currency pairs. For example, you buy euros and sell dollars because you think the euro is going to strengthen against the dollar. The Forex market is the largest market in the world and operates practically 24 hours a day. The potential profitability is high because of the leverage that's used. But let me tell you something very honestly. The vast majority of people who trade Forex lose money. I'm not telling you this to scare you, but so you're clear about it. If you're going to get into Forex, you need training, you need practice, you need a clear strategy, and above all, you need discipline. Interactive Brokers offers very competitive conditions for Forex with currency conversion commissions of just 0.2%, which is cheaper than many specialized currency exchange services. In fact, I'm explaining it to you this way because I researched it, but personally, I don't even invest in Forex. But I'm telling you about it as a way to make money, and for those who know more and are more interested, they can dig deeper and get trained on the subject. And let's move on to the next investment. And this is something that maybe not many people know about, but it's become quite relevant recently. And it's called forecast contracts, which is basically a prediction market. Let me explain how this works. Within Interactive Brokers, there's a platform called Forecast Trader. And what you can do there is buy contracts based on predictions of real-world events. They're simple yes or no questions. For example, will the Federal Reserve's interest rate be above a certain level on a given date? Will the price of gold close above $2,000 today? Will unemployment in the United States exceed a certain percentage? You buy a yes or no contract, and if your prediction is correct, you get a fixed payout of $1 per contract. Contracts are bought at prices between 2 cents and 99 cents. So if you buy a yes contract at 20 cents and your prediction turns out to be correct, you receive $1. Your profit would be 80 cents per contract, which means a 400% return on your investment. But if your prediction is wrong, you lose the 20 cents you paid. That's your maximum loss. Interestingly, it's regulated. There are platforms where you can do something similar, but they aren't well regulated. ForecastEx, the platform behind this, is regulated by the CFTC, the U.S. Commodity Futures Trading Commission. It's not some underground betting house or anything like that. It's a regulated market where basically the price of the contract reflects the probability that the market assigns to an event happening. If a yes contract is trading at 75 cents, it means the market estimates there's a 75% chance that event will happen. You can trade forecast contracts on economic, financial, climate, and even political topics, depending on whether you're eligible to use this tool or not. And the commissions are just 1 cent per contract, which is basically nothing. Obviously, it's not something to put all your capital into, but it's a really interesting tool for diversifying or simply taking advantage of your knowledge of the economy and markets in a different way. And now that we've reached the end of the video, let me give you a general overview and summary of the 14 ways we covered in this video. We started with the passive methods, which were earning interest on your cash balance, and the stock lending program. Then we moved on to the foundation of every portfolio with bonds, dividends, and mutual funds. After that, we looked at where real wealth is built with ETFs, individual stocks, fractional shares, precious metals, and cryptocurrencies. And then we got into advanced territory with options, futures, and Forex. And we wrapped up with forecast contracts, which to me is one of the most interesting and innovative features this platform offers. The truth is, Interactive Brokers isn't just a broker for buying stocks, like many people think. It's probably the most complete platform out there for investing and making money in multiple ways. And the most important thing here is not to use all 14 at the same time, but to know they exist and, based on your investment strategy, choose the ones that suit you best. Also, make sure you understand how each one works and pick those that fit your profile, your knowledge, and your goals. It's one thing to invest simply because you know what options are out there, but it's another to invest directly, knowing everything you can actually do and having a solid base of information on your options. That said, if you've made it this far in the video, drop a rocket emoji in the comments section, because honestly, if you already knew more than half of these ways, you're already way ahead of the game. And if you didn't know about them, now you know. You have 14 tools available to grow your money on this platform. See you next time. Bye-bye.